Call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. This meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. We'll begin with the pledges to the United States and Texas flag and a moment of silence. Thank you. Moving on to item 1C, superintendent announcements. Dr. Lee.
Good evening, board. Welcome to your regular August board meeting. I know we had a board meeting last week for some board training that was required, but we're excited to be back. To everyone else, we want to say welcome back, Matador Nation. It's hard to imagine, but we're already 2 weeks into the new school year. We're technically today, I guess, starts week 3 for us. It's coming back, and I want to say our campuses are extremely busy. I've had the opportunity to visit campuses and see our staff hard at work. I am so proud to be a part of this team, not because of the position that I hold, but because I get to see how dedicated our teachers and staff are. And what they're dedicated to the most right now is our students. Everything that we are doing is about them. I want to address a couple of things just from the get-go. As you may have heard in the news, recently we did receive ratings from the Texas Education Agency, like any other school district across the state. And if I'm the straight shooter that I am, I'll address we have some great accomplishments that have happened. We also have some challenges to address, but there's still a lot of news that's worth celebrating there. We had 6 campuses that received A or B ratings, including several with distinctions. We had Ball Early Childhood, who's attached to one of our elementary campuses, Jefferson Elementary, Kinnicky Elementary, McQueeney Elementary, Potlon, and Mercer Bloomberg that did that work that were rated A or B. For the campuses that I didn't mention, that doesn't mean that we didn't see great work there. We still saw a lot of improvement across our campuses in both student learning, student achievement, what they score on their STAR tests specifically, versus student growth. We saw quite a bit of student growth across the district. There's a lot of good work that happened last year as part of what happens. If I stand on my soapbox for a second, and since I'm the one who has the microphone, I guess I get the ability to do that for a split second here. I'm not a believer that a one-time high-stakes test tells the full story of students or teachers that work their tails off in the classroom. Do we have to play the game of accountability? Yes, that's what the state has set up with us. As a superintendent, am I afraid of accountability? Absolutely not. It tells us what we need to work on. The key is to look at it, see where we need to improve, review the data, and then actually respond to it in a way that works. And so I'm proud of what we're looking at and what we have to do. I will say this, I shared the same thing earlier today in an interview with news media about accountability in our ratings. Yes, we have work to do. Yes, we have improvement that needs to be made. Improvement takes time. It takes a lot of time to see some of the improvement that you really want to see that happens, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening. It just means that we've got work to do and that we're going to get down to it, and I'm excited. Our leadership team has already started having those conversations. We're working with principals to make those things happen, and I fully expect that we're going to see quite a bit of improvement as we even move into this school year. Outside of accountability, I want to say that we've received several donations over the past few weeks, including snacks for our teachers and school supplies for our students. I had the privilege of joining several of you to hand out Box of Dreams school supply kits at Jefferson and McQueeney this month. Those of you that were there know how fun that was and how exciting that was to see the students just light up with joy. It was a great way to start the day by meeting our students and seeing their smiles as they received their supplies. A special thank you to Texas Yes for those kits, as well as the community members and businesses who support and continue to support our students and staff. I want to offer a very special thank you to the Seguin Art League, whose gallery will host rotating displays featuring our visual art students this year. Kelly Hallmark, our art teacher at AJB, will curate the students' display, and it will debut next month, I apologize. Auditions have already started for Seguin High School's fall production of Aladdin Jr. I can't wait to see that. I'm a big theater person. I'm big everything as a superintendent. Let me make that clear also. But I'm excited to see that. Their fall season has already started for several sports teams, including cross country, tennis, volleyball. Our Lady Matadors will host Matador Volleyball Classic beginning this Thursday. The same day, our freshman and JV football teams will take on Alamo Heights. I want to just say a best of luck to all of our high school and middle school student athletes. The first varsity football game of the season is just a few days away. I hope that you'll join us in making the trip to Alamo Heights. It's an away game so that we can cheer on the Matadors. That's our football team, our band, our cheer, our drill team, the students that go to support each other. If you can't make it, you do have the ability to watch that game live, thanks to our new partnership with Texas Sports Productions. All varsity football games this season will be broadcast on gotsp.live, for those who needed the actual address, gotsp.live. This week's game will also be the Peanut Butter Bowl, so be sure that you bring your peanut butter donations to your school's front office or to the Seguin ISD Athletic Office this week. You can also donate on peanutbutterbowl.com. All donations do go to our local Christian cupboard. Just keep in mind that this is a contest for schools as well. The winning elementary and middle school will also get an autographed football helmet to put on display. Last year, our district donated over 4,000 jars of peanut butter, and I look forward to seeing if we can beat that number this year. So all in all, board, we have had a great and fantastic first couple of weeks, and we're just excited about what the school year is going to offer.
Thank you. Moving on to board reports, 1D. Would you like to start, Mr. Bright?
Absolutely. So great kickoff to the school year so far. Started off at the beginning of the month with convocation. I've unfortunately not been able to make it to a convocation so far as a school board member, so this was my first one, and I gotta tell you, I left very inspired. I'm really looking forward to what everything's gonna happen this year. Dr. Lee led that convocation, and it was a really great event. Also, the Texas Yes handing out school supplies was there for that, and super appreciative for the sponsor on that one and getting those children the school supplies that they'll need to help them through the year. And then probably the thing that I was most impressed with so far was the first day of school at Seguin High School. The way that the staff from both central office and the high school were all working together. The metal detector thing went off great. I watched my oldest son, who stood in line outside the high school, and it took him under 2 minutes to get from outside the high school in through the metal detector and screen and into get his morning breakfast at the cafeteria. So applaud to the staff, Dr. Carrillo, for making that happen and all the planning that went into that. And from what I've heard so far this school year, it's continuing to operate that way. So thank you to everyone who made that happen, and I think it's going to be a great year this year.
I feel very fortunate for all of the experiences that I get to have as a school board member and the invitations that I get. I think probably a highlight for me this last month was attending the bilingual welcome event for new kindergartners. To be able to see these new kindergartners and their parents come in and be so excited for the new journey that they're going on, and then also seeing what really how it's promoted as a family event, and the family learning to be bilingual as well, and each kid was presented with a packet of information for them to be able to start playing games at home, and just love that community school connection there.
I just have 3 items. On the 31st, I attended the dual language celebration, which was held here, and it was very informative to the parents as far as how the district participates and what to expect. And I actually met an individual that he said that he specifically chose this district over Navarro because of that program. So I was very happy to hear that. The video shoot before that for the Matador Nations, and board meeting through Teams about the Ag Center, and it's coming along pretty good, and everything's on schedule. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Dwyer.
I too got to attend my first convocation. I thought that was really awesome. Very exciting and inspiring event. I thought it was very cool for all of our staff and us as board members as well. And then also, of course, I'm continuing to attend all these construction meetings. I can tell you that we're wrapping up our transportation facility upgrades, which is really nice. I believe they're all rocking and rolling on that. I spent the day at the ag facility today. They got 2 big barns out there. They're running pipe and conduit. It's coming along very well. I got to tour barns last week with all the kids in it. They're very excited about their new school and rocking and rolling. I got to give the Kaler Company a big shout out for that. They've done a really outstanding job on that project. And of course, we've got lots of folks out there at McQueenie Elementary going and blowing day and night, 7 days a week. So all those construction projects are really rolling, and it's very exciting for our staff and our kids.
Well, it's hard for me to highlight something that no one else has talked about. I thoroughly enjoyed convocation. I think it was a great start to the year. Also attended the welcome back party that was at the high school for everyone in the district, and that was a lot of fun. It was well attended. I'm glad we put this event on every year. For the first time, our Board of Trustees had a booth there as well, and we played a little game called Rock, Paper, Scissors. And I don't know, those kids must play in school every day because I think they all beat me, all but one. So anyway, but it was fun. I enjoyed that. Also, we had our Team of 8 training, and it was the first time, we have some new members to the board, and we've been serving together without going through this training for a while, and it was nice for us just to be together and to learn together and grow together. And I'm excited about this Team of 8 and the work that we have yet to do.
I didn't know I did as much until I started looking at my calendar. The construction committee, like Will, I'm on that one, and it takes up several days each week. But it's always fun within those 2 weeks that you get to go back to a construction site to see how far they've come. Besides what Will has mentioned on things, I had the distinct pleasure of helping Flora and Popa go and take McQueenie Elementary on their first tour of McQueenie Elementary. And we did that on the first day. And they were so excited. I have a window in my room. Look how big it is. And they were enthralled with everything. They're so excited about the whole thing. So they say, are we going to be ready at Christmas? No, sorry. Soon, though, during the summertime. I was at the McQueenie opening up the doors, and then I also got to do the Texas Yes supplies with McQueenie out there. That was fun. Convocation, I had more teachers come to me and say, did you know that was the best one I've ever been to? So kudos, Dr. Lee and Jill, for all the work that went into that. So it came across to the teachers as a wonderful experience. They all loved it. I did get to go on a photo shoot with Dick's Sports store, donated money for athletic equipment, and we took it out there to the MBLC and donated it out there, and they were so excited to get that money for some sports equipment. I kind of snuck in to welcome back at Seguin High School for just a bit, and then the back to school bash. So it was a busy month after all, and it was lots of fun.
Great, thank y'all. I got to go to the same things that some of you went to, Convocation, which I have had many compliments on. People who've worked here 30 years said that was the best convocation they'd been to, so thank you to everybody. Delivering school supplies with the Box of Dreams, I did Jefferson and Potlawn, and to see kids so excited about school supplies, as excited as I am about school supplies, it was the best. And just seeing the interactions between the teachers and the staff and our students is always great. For the Back to School Bash, I do want to say thank you to Mrs. Burns for spearheading us having a table. We haven't had a table before, and it was fun playing rock, paper, scissors, and I actually hurt my hand. So that is quite the injury to have. I know, I needed some ice or something. And yesterday, Jackie Sylvia's, and Grace and I had a meeting on a reading challenge that we're looking into. We did the trustee, well, actually we did both parts last year, and so it'll get us back in the classrooms reading and our third graders doing some extra reading. And I also just wanted to remind everybody about Meet the Matadors tomorrow. I know, Linda Duncan, I was counting on you. Meet the Matadors tomorrow, where we get to meet the Matadors. So, thank you. All right, we're moving on to item 2. Audience with the board. The Seguin ISD Board of Trustees designates a time for audience participation at the beginning of each meeting to hear persons who desire to make comments in accordance with Board Policy BED Local. Those wishing to speak sign up before the meeting begins, stating the concern or noting the agenda item they wish to address. Audience participation is limited to 5 minutes. The board shall not deliberate any subject that is not on the posted agenda. We have 3 speakers signed up this evening. The first one is Jason Biesenbach, and he's speaking on item 8E. So Linda will be your timer, and she can give you the 1-minute signal if you would
Oh,
like.
I'm not going to just go off the 5 minutes. That stays
can-
5 minutes?
You can.
Too bad, too bad. All right. Good evening, trustees, Dr. Lee. My name is Jason Biesenbach. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I hope you all had a chance to read the bills I sent you in an email Sunday evening. The question before us is this: do the benefits of allowing homeschool students to participate in Seguin ISD extracurricular activities outweigh the challenges? I believe the answer is yes. As Coach Daly said in the September meeting, no District 13-5A or 27-5A school has stepped forward to do this. Seguin could and should be the first. The legislature has already created a framework for us. HB 547 passed in 2021. It gave districts the option to allow homeschoolers to join UIL activities. That bill requires accountability, proof of academic proficiency, compliance with UIL rules, and full participation in practice, games, and events. The text of HB 547 makes this crystal clear that homeschool students must meet the same expectations as everyone else. In 2023, HB 3708, addressing funding by providing $1,500 per homeschool student per activity to support districts that participate. And just this year, Senate Bill 401 reaffirmed this by allowing this to be a local decision. You have the authority to act. We could also look to a nearby example. Lockhart ISD has allowed homeschool students to participate since 2022. They require families to declare by August 1st if a child wants to participate, to provide test results from a nationally recognized assessment showing academic proficiency, and to commit fully to every practice, workout, meeting, and event. Lockhart also requires homeschool students to ride the bus, follow the school code of conduct, and meet the same eligibility rules as their peers. Their experience shows that the system works and that the rules are clear and consistently applied. Some concerns have been raised in this discussion. One is academic integrity. HB 547 directly requires full accountability. And as parents, we value our children's education just as much as every other family in this district. Another concern is extracurricular disruption, that homeschoolers might not be consistent or accountable. Again, the law is clear, full accountability is required. There's also been discussion about school culture, but in reality, these kids are already playing together in Little League, youth soccer, dance, and other community activities. When they put on the same jersey or join the same dance company, they adapt quickly. They unite under their coach, director, and they work towards the same goal, to win, to excel, and to be excellent together. Limiting resources have also been mentioned, but resources are already limited in every activity. Not every student makes the football team, basketball team, or baseball team. That won't change. Sports are earned. Spots are earned. And when someone asks, how do you tell a homeschool student that they didn't make the team, or how do you tell a government school student that the homeschooler did, the answer is simple. It's called meritocracy. The best prepared student earns the spot. That's competition and that's fairness. And that's what already happens. It's also important to remember the distinction between academics and extracurriculars. Academics provide knowledge, while extracurriculars provide leadership, teamwork, and resilience. Both matter. Both shape students into well-rounded adults. The distinct difference here is that as homeschool parents, we choose to focus our children's academics on a one-on-one basis. That personalized focus does not lessen the value of extracurricular activities, it strengthens it, because it allows homeschool students to bring the same drive of excellence into athletics, band, theater, and every other UIL program Seguin ISD has to offer. I also know there's been a little bit of fear about the possible influx of homeschool participation, but if you look behind me, nobody shows up. The reality is participation will likely be limited and manageable. As homeowners, we faithfully pay our taxes, and yet we receive none of the benefits. All we're asking here is for a chance for our students to contribute their talents and represent Seguin with pride. I'd like to close with the words of Dr. Lee himself from July 14, 2025, quoted from the Seguin Daily News. Just like strong academics, I firmly believe in the value of extracurricular activities. If students are doing the things that they love, and that's what gets them to school, and that's what energizes them every single day, so that we can still teach English, science, math, social studies, all those things, that's what we have to emphasize. That's what we have to leverage. We need kids to have the opportunities to be part of something larger. We need kids to be something part of larger, to be a part of something that has meaning, that has value for them. Seguin should lead the way. Let's be first. Go Matadors. And one final thought. As a current member of Seguin City Council, I know how important it is and valuable the director's recommendations are, but I would like to remind you, they are recommendations. You are the governing body. You are the elected representatives of the people, and you make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jackie Biesenbach, speaking about 8E. And I'll just remind you, you have only 5 minutes.
And I'm not as fancy. I have
No worries. If you would like, Ms. Duncan will give you the 1 minute. All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, and community. My name is Jackie Biesenbach, and I'm here tonight to respectfully ask that Seguin ISD allow homeschool participation in UIL activities. We all know that activities like sports, fine arts, and academics competitions aren't just about the trophies. They build leaders, teammates, and citizens. They teach discipline, perseverance, and what it means to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Our homeschool students are already part of this community. They play on the same Little League fields, dance on the same stages, and attend the same churches. And we didn't. It's weird. Anyways, you get it. They are Seguin's kids too, and they want to have a chance to stand proudly beside their peers as matadors. The state of Texas has already recognized this by passing legislation that allows homeschool participation and even provides funding to the districts that open that door. This is not just a benefit for the homeschool families, but it's a benefit for Seguin ISD, for the coaches, and for the programs that help all of these kids succeed. I stand here today to advocate on behalf of the children, just as you sit there doing the same. Let's come together in that mission and reach the common goal that we all share, that every child in our community has the opportunity to succeed in life. I also understand that change takes time. A policy has a process, and I understand that. If we need to start somewhere, let's start somewhere together to make this grow for the children. At the end of the day, the decision comes down to this one question. Is it truly about the kids? And if so, let it be about all the kids of the city of Seguin, no matter how they're educated. Seguin has the opportunity to lead with fairness and unity, showing the rest of Texas that when it comes to our children's growth, development, and opportunity, we can stand together. Let's be a model of inclusion and show our kids that their community leads with courage and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our last speaker is Jennifer McDevitt. Did I say it right? Also speaking about 8E. And Ms. Duncan can give you the 1 minute mark if you'd like.
Great. I want to start by thanking those of you who took the time to meet with us over the last few weeks to discuss this access for homeschoolers to UIL activities. A lot of the meeting was very productive in hearing what you had to say about how this could actually happen on a practical level and not just on a theoretical, like way out there, like this seems crazy and this seems kind of too big for us. On that note, I know you have a very long meeting ahead of you, and this is at the end of it. So I have, if I can give you a copy of this, a proposal that has a specific plan. None of those details are something I have to decide, but it gives you an idea of something that we think is actionable now, this year, this school year, and it crosses with the research we did in our homeschool community about the programs that people are asking for. And so it's a cross between those two things, and if Jackie could give you a copy right now, that would be awesome. You're very generous. You haven't even started it. Oh, thanks. Oh, I got 0. Okay, you're free to read that later when you actually are talking about this, but I will just, my thing is not very long. I'd like to speak to you for just a moment about community. My children personally have always been homeschooled, but they've also been able to engage with our community in a variety of ways through numerous community organizations in Seguin. They have taken art classes and entered art contests through the Seguin Art League. They've done tours and other events through the Seguin Conservation Society and the Big Red Barn. They have bought and sold homemade crafted creations at the Seguin Children's Business Fair. They have entertained our community with their music at the Nesbitt Living Center, the Kiwanis Flapjack Jamboree, the Downtown Seguin Trade Days, Holiday Stroll, and Sip and Stroll. They have sung with community chorus at the Noche de Gala. They have their activities at the Seguin Public Library, a community treasure that we all know and love, is far too varied to list here. They have done tours, they've entered crafts, they volunteered with the Guadalupe County Fair, and they are very active with TLU's Community Music Academy, including a featured performance last spring with the TLU Orchestra. I'm listing all of these things because all of these organizations have common goals. They bring community members together without requiring their participants to be involved in every activity, and none of them require a particular form of education to be invited to participate in their events. I'd like to challenge you to evaluate your role in our community. Your first job, of course, is educators. But you also play a vital role in the community as a whole. When you provide an extracurricular activity to your students, you use community resources, but you create barriers unintentionally. Your decisions here have the power to develop connections and to replace those barriers and to reduce those barriers between the families and the educators in our community who all share the same goals of raising the next generation, each in a manner appropriate to their station in life. What better time than now to choose to engage and connect the Seguin community rather than to separate and divide? Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 3 reports and information items. 3A, personnel information, professional employees. Mr. Newman.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. I have a list of resignations and new hires for you to recognize and acknowledge.
Any board members have a question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3B, Seguin ISD 24-25 and 25-26 budget updates. Liz Banks.
Good evening again. I have got just a real short presentation to update y'all on the 24-25 year that we're just now closing out, June 30th, and then the 25-26 school year as far as our budget goes. We've talked a lot about the 24-25 budget deficit as we've gone through the 24-25 school year. As we're closing out our year and coming to the end of some processes, I just wanted to give you an update where I think we're going to land. Our auditors will present our audit for that fiscal year at the October 28th board meeting. So numbers are subject to change, but we had a deficit of $5.6 million, and I've just listed some things that are positively affecting that budget deficit. We had a protest that was just accepted by the Texas State Comptroller that increased our revenue for this fiscal year by about $1 million. So that was unexpected revenue that we can decrease our budget deficit with. So that's a really great thing. We are under budget and payroll by about $1.7 million. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in a slide as far as what that means, but we are under budget that amount, so we're not going to use that as our part of our deficit. We were also under budget in security, ESS. ESS is the company that we use for substitutes. We did make an effort to use less substitutes last year, so we were able to do that. It paid off. The only reason we saved money in security is because we did find some federal money that we were able to offset what we thought we were going to spend. And then we were also under budget in utilities. So that came to about $400,000 that we can take out of our deficit. At the end of the year, y'all know this, we've talked about this before, we look for ways that we can use federal money, things that we can move. We did not spend all of our assigned fund balance. We're trying to get away from assigning fund balance and keep things in general annual expenditures. And then our payments to our fiscal agent, which is our shared services arrangement with Seguin ISD, was about $450,000 less than we budgeted. So we're projecting about a $1.3 million deficit for the 24-25 school year. So that's great. Again, subject to change due to journal entries that we're still making, and also as our auditors make journal entries. But that's great news. For 25-26, y'all do have an August budget amendment this evening, and I just kind of wanted to explain that here. It's part of the consent agenda. We did have a $5.8 million deficit starting the 25-26 school year. We have our QZAB payment, which we're on payment 9 of 15, has to be paid with general fund dollars. And then we have our damage, the roof, the weather here at central office, our deductible for that. And then also the health insurance employer contribution increase that y'all approved last month. So that brings us to a $7.5 million deficit for 25-26, bigger number than we had for 24-25. But just looking forward in September and October, there's a lot going on right now. We're still getting updates from TEA as they are interpreting legislation. I did find about $680,000 in budget savings that we are taking out of the budget. Just a process of going line by line through the budget, looking for things that maybe haven't been spent for 2 or 3 years in a row. Let's take that out. There were some miscellaneous contracted services. We're planning to spend less in legal services, which is something we did last year as well, and also continued monitoring of our sub system, where we're getting subs for maybe things that we don't really have to have a sub for. So trying to rein that in a little bit. We are going to see an increase in revenue due to legislation. We're saying $3.5 million. Keep in mind that's based on last year's staff, last year's students. That's going to change. But in September and October, we'll get closer to that number as we get through the first 6 weeks of our kids in school and see what we have and kind of do some projecting. We are proposing a compensation plan this evening that the approximate cost is going to be about $4 million. And we're looking at possible payroll savings. So on the prior slide, when I said we were under budget and payroll by about $1.7 million, we're getting to where, especially with the hiring of our new Chief Human Resources Officer, we are going to really try to nail down vacancies. So a lot of times you do have some budget savings due to vacancies. If you have 25 open positions throughout the year and you're paying for subs, you're going to see savings, but it's not going to be $1.7 million. So we're going to try and get closer to that number, but I'm hoping to add about $1 million back into the budget, which will decrease our deficit. So kind of looking forward between this month and the next 2 months, we're looking at probably a $6.3 million deficit, but I try to be conservative, so hopefully it will get better than that. And then this is just our fund balance update. The end of 23-24, we were at $35 million. The unaudited estimate use of fund balance for 24-25 is $1.3 million, and as of right now, we're looking at a $6.3 million. So again, that's going to change throughout the year, but we're looking at $27.4 million in our fund balance for the end of this fiscal year. And just a reminder, our board policy for our minimum fund balance is 25% of our annual operating expenditures, which is going to be about $21 million. So, have any questions?
Ms. Banks, I have a question
ma'am.
about, there's been a lot of changes with our financials in last year, reclassifications. Last year, we had a $5 million budget deficit. For the slides, that is back down to about $1 million. A large swing.
Yeah.
This year, hopefully, crossing fingers, we end up kind of in a similar position. Is that something that will be consistently with a bigger deficit, or with procedures that are being put into place over the last couple of years, will it be more on par for next year?
Yeah, so the change in CTE funding was a big part of our change. We hope to continue to see that swing. We hope to see it keep going up. Also, when we adopt the budget, we have planned on a flat student number. Last year, we decreased our students by about 150 students. That was not expected. So dependent on our student numbers, our CTE enrollment, our legislation, our attendance, and our staffing, yeah, it kind of swings. Wish I had a crystal ball, but yeah, it's pretty typical.
Yeah, I know it's hard to explain because you wouldn't think that with budgeting you would see such a large swing. But the way that the state of Texas does funding for public schools is it's not based on enrollment, it's based on attendance. So if students aren't in school, we aren't funded for students for being in school. And so that attendance number, there's two places that we really can make up a considerable amount of financial gains. Three, really. The first one being attendance. If students are in school, we're going to generate higher funding. Because of that. The second being CTE, which Ms. Banks and I met today with our CTE director to talk through like what other things we could start looking at, and we're trying to get a game plan together on that. And then the third thing is obviously personnel, which is the last thing that we really want to look at, but when roughly 85% of your budget numbers are personnel costs, that's where it is. We can turn the lights off, but they're not going to save us $6.3 million by turning the lights off at night. Is what it really comes down to. And so we're just looking hard at those things. I do want to give Ms. Banks a lot of credit for what you're seeing on the unaudited estimate for 24-25. Like, that's a huge swing, and that's a testament to the work that was done over the past year. And I expect that we'll hopefully see some of the same things over this next year. We just got to get some more processes and procedures in place to try to prevent them from being such a swing.
Yeah, and you're right. We need processes and procedures, especially
So
when it comes to
It's
staffing.
expected the 26-27 budget
26-27?
will hopefully be a balanced budget where we're not deficit.
Man, I hope so. I mean, we
okay.
can tell you what to do. We just have to do it. Yeah.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you for generating the report.
Yeah,
And yeah, that's
absolutely.
good news, down to 1.3.
Yep.
It's not
Thank you.
easy.
We appreciate your work on this and your
Thanks.
team's work. Any other questions or comments? Item 3C is financial statements for July 2025.
So you'll see the general fund, the debt service fund, and the child nutrition fund financial statements. There's not really anything to point out on there. Debt service fund, we are not doing a defeasance this year. We plan not to do one this year and next year because when we adopted the budget, the legislature was still talking about how they were going to handle that. So that ended up being a really good move. But everything else looks on track on here.
Any questions? All right, you get to stay for item 3D, new vendors.
So these are just vendors that have replied to RFPs that we have on our website, and they are added to our vendor list.
Questions? All right. 3E, purchases made over $50,000. And for our newer board members, this is what this looks like at the beginning of the year. We buy many things.
Yes, as President Crittenden noted, there are a lot of things at the beginning of the year. So these are all regular purchases through a cooperative or an interlocal. So this is just for information.
Any questions? All right, thank
Okay.
you. Oh,
I have
sorry.
a question real quick.
Yep.
Yes, Mr.
With the food stuff towards the bottom of that, that comes out of the child nutrition budget, right?
Most likely, there could be some maintenance stuff in there. Dairy farmers, definitely. So that's coming out of a federal fund. Yes, like you said. Brothers Produce, yes. Probably New World Bakery, Imperial Bag and Paper, might be maintenance.
I do appreciate we getting that line item for ice cream, though.
It's a
that's
big
clutch.
deal.
It is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, you're the next item as well. Moving on to action items 4A, consideration and possible action to delegate authority to the superintendent to negotiate the agreement between Seguin ISD and San Antonio Will Smith Zoo School.
Yes, this is just to give Dr. Lee authority to amend the contract in conversations with myself and Dr. Lee and the CFO from Will Smith San Antonio Zoo School. We want a couple things added as a financial addendum. This way we don't have to keep coming back to you if something changes.
Is that a financial addendum for Seguin ISD or for the zoo school?
Both.
Can we just have, in generalities,
Yep,
what
I'll tell you
is the zoo
exactly what
school
it is.
asking for?
Yeah, so to move forward with the program with less students than originally agreed to, they decided to do away with the budget requirement that they had previously asked for. We reworded, we're going to look at the state funding at the end of the first 6 weeks for all of the eligible co-enrolled students at Seguin ISD and Will Smith Zoo School. That's a little different. And we also want to be sure and call out if there is any deficient funding that is billed back to the zoo school for their 85%.
Yeah, what we've really pushed for more than anything else is to make sure that we were very transparent with the zoo school on what that agreement and what that amount meant. The original agreement basically said that we were going to pay a lump sum to the zoo school to offset the enrollment cost, and then at the end of the year, we would do a settle up. And the way that it was worded, though, I don't think their CFO quite understood school funding, much like enrollment versus attendance. And so we just wanted to make sure that there were no surprises if there was suddenly a payment back to us as part of a decrease in enrollment or attendance or whatever else. We think that we've got it all settled now once we had a good conversation with them, so we should be good. I think the last update that I got on zoo school enrollment was out of the 40 slots, we were at 29, which is pretty solid. It may be a little bit higher. I think that was about a week ago was the number, but like we're all set. This action item is really just to keep us from having to keep bringing you any type of change that happens, although I don't really anticipate any other changes after we get this next one fully signed and everything else.
Their CFO has probably learned more about school finance than she wanted to.
Any questions?
Madam President, I move to delegate authority to the superintendent to negotiate the agreement between Seguin ISD and the San Antonio Will Smith Zoo School.
Second.
Oh, that was
It's
a
a
tie.
tie.
I'm going to give it to Mr. Bright because I was looking his way. Okay, so that is a motion for Mr. Dwyer and a second from Mr. Bright. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have had a request to move item 4B to after closed session. If there are no objections, I'll make that change in the order. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I didn't get to give you a heads up about that, Ms. Line. So we'll move to 4C, designation of non-business days for Public Information Act requests. Emily Allen.
Good evening, President Crittenden, Dr. Lee, and trustees. This is actually pretty simple. This is the same thing that we bring up to you each year in regards to our non-business designated days, and I probably said that backwards. Hey, Jeff, would you advance it real quick? Sorry. Would you advance the slide, please? Oh, I do? Ha! See, surprise. Okay, non-business days for PIA requests. So this just means under House Bill 3033, which was from the 2023 legislature, that we can choose 10 days that we do not have to count against our PIA days. These are the exact same days we proposed last year. So it's gonna be the first 3 days of spring break, the first 3 days of Thanksgiving, and the first 4 non-holiday days of the winter break because Christmas falls on a Thursday. So that's it. Any questions?
Just kind of surprised you guys didn't add anything in for the fall break.
We did not this year, no, sir.
Some of it really just has to do with we only get the 10 non-business days. And so it just made more sense to keep it the way that we've done it as part of that. We don't receive an overabundance of public information requests. I mean, we get them every now and then. I know, knock on wood, right?
This is
but
probably
there's-
my busiest time.
Yeah,
Again,
the
keep
beginning
talking.
of the year, we get quite a few that are more with staff lists and contact information and things like that, especially at the beginning of the year, and then they ramp back up at the end of the year as retirement companies especially
Absolutely.
are looking for retirees to be able to do some of those things. And so it's really just us designating a handful of days over lengthier periods of time to prevent us from running into the deadline while we're not here. That Christmas break especially is one of the bigger ones because we're out for the solid 2 weeks and becomes part of that. So.
And just to be clear, we have done, I mean, this is not to toot my own horn necessarily, but also to really emphasize the work that we have here in our district, the teamwork that we have, that we've been very good about meeting all of our deadlines spot on, if not earlier. So people are getting the information that they're requesting in a timely manner. And those 10 days really go toward whether or not we're going to challenge anything with the Texas Attorney General. So as long as we keep in touch with the requester, that 10 days doesn't always apply. It just means that's the window that we need. You know, we can let them know it's going to take us a little longer. So it's not been an issue.
Madam President, I move for approval of the designation of non-business days for Public Information Act PIA request as presented.
I have a motion from Ms. Duncan and a second from Mrs. Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move into closed session. The board will adjourn into closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. 5A, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, 551.074, 551.129, consultation with legal counsel, including possible telephone consultation with legal counsel as necessary to address legal concerns, implications, and answer any legal questions regarding posted agenda items. 5B, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, discuss personnel matters, including appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of an employee. C, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.072, discuss the sale, purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. And D, pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.0821, deliberation regarding a public school student. We're going into closed session at 7:19 p.m. Okay, we're back from closed session at 8:45 p.m. There is no action there in 6A. Moving on to consent agenda, consider and possible approval. Policy BE local states that the consent agenda shall include items of a routine and/or recurring nature grouped together under one action item. All such items shall be acted upon by one vote without separate discussion unless a board member requests that an item be withdrawn for individual consideration. The remaining items shall be adopted under a single motion and vote as applicable. 7A, approval of board minutes of special meeting July 10th, 2025, regular meeting July 22nd, 2025, and special meeting July 29th, 2025. 7B, approval of tax collection reports for July 2025. 7C, approval of proposed budget amendments. August 2025. 7D, approval of donations received July 2025. 7E, designate the chief financial officer to calculate the new revenue tax rate and the voter approval rate for the 2025 tax year in accordance with tax code 26.01C. Said officer previously prepared and published all required notices and calculations. 7F, authorization of agreement between Seguin ISD and Thrive Learning Services in the amount of $102,600. 7G, 2025-2026 Student Code of Conduct. 7H, consideration and approval of School Health Advisory Council SHAC Annual Report, SHAC Goals, and Committee Members. 7I, consideration of approval of certified appraisers for the 2025-2026. And 7J, acknowledge Public Information Act requests July to August 2025. Are there any items that a board member would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove item 7H, consideration and approval of School Health Advisory Council Annual Report, SHAC Goals, and Committee Members.
Okay, so that's 7H. We will pull that and discuss that after the rest of the items. Any other items?
I move that we approve the consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I, and J.
I have a motion from Mrs. Miller and a second from Ms. Duncan. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. So now we'll go to 7H, consideration of approval of School Health Advisory Council, SHAC, annual report, SHAC Goals, and Committee Members, Mr. Silvius.
Well, good evening. Good to see you, President Crittenton, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Lee. It's good to be with you guys. Thanks, Ms. Burns, for pulling it. You know, it's a sincere pleasure to speak with all of you, always. So it's great to be with you guys tonight. So I think all of you have a pretty significant relationship with the SHAC committee. Our newest board member, Mr. Dwyer, your wife has served on it, but I think the others have either participated or have been a part of hearing some of our annual reports. So a lot of this is kind of ordinary routine, but to Mrs. Burns pulling the agenda item, I really appreciate that because it does emphasize the importance of student health and addressing all of those foundational needs that we know are so important to the academic goals that we have for our kiddos. So it's a great opportunity to put this forward so the public can be reminded of how important that is. I'm going to ask Jeff, if you don't mind, just jump to, oh, do I have a clicker? I do. Thank you, sir. So Texas Education Code, Chapter 28, Section 28.004, requires that you as a school board appoint a minimum of 5 members. And of those members, the majority must be Seguin ISD parents. So the concept here is to really engage the community in a way to hear the values of the community as it relates to sometimes some really controversial topics related to everything from sexual health to health instruction to child nutrition, and there continues to be more and more opportunity for the shack to be utilized as a sounding board for you to really hear the values of the community. So it's a really a wonderful opportunity that the state provides for you as a school board to have an advisory board that reports directly to you. There's very few boards that, or very few committees that work on behalf of you and report directly to you. On the board, on the shack, there needs to be a chair or a co-chair that is a parent. So we've been fortunate to have a chair that has been a parent, and he gets nominated and elected several years in a row. He's done a great job for us. Mark Dibble has done that the past several years. So we'll put that to a vote again this year, pending approval of a new slate of members that you'll see in just a moment. In addition, the Board of Trustees is required to hear an annual report where we can share with you the goals that the shack has and any achievements that we'd like to highlight. So with that, Jeff, do you need to press those for me, if you would, please? With that, I'll go into the annual report. So as a shack, we have 4 goals that we try to anchor all of our efforts around. The first being to promote student nutrition. The second is to increase opportunities and access for physical activity for all students, staff, and the community. Third being, thank you, increase parental and community involvement to include support of coordinated school health and the shack. And coordinated school health it's another state mandate that is required for K to 8. And in Seguin ISD, we have adopted the CATCH curriculum, and that has been our adopted curriculum for many years. It's an evidence-based program born out of UT in Austin, and is now being managed by a global foundation. But it's a great program, and we're very satisfied with that. And then 4, educate the whole child with health and wellness at the center of academic achievement. This year, the achievements that we'd like to highlight, we spent several meetings talking about a triannual assessment of our wellness plan. And to make sense of what that is, the wellness plan guides us as a district, and the wellness plan is a requirement of any school district that's receiving federal funds through the Child Nutrition Program. But the assessment is of the wellness plan, not necessarily an assessment of our practices, but an assessment of our plan. And so we had to remind ourselves of that several times. And so what we're doing when we're reviewing the assessment is we're looking at our plan and seeing, does the plan provide enough detail for us to really give direction to the practices that are happening within the school. I'll give you an example of one of the topics that we spent a considerable amount of time on. There was a question about, does your wellness plan address caffeine? And our wellness plan did not at the time address caffeine. There are some protocols that can be put in place on a wellness plan to say, we're going to allow this amount of caffeine to be a part of the diet. And so that was one of those things where we needed to decide if the wellness plan was going to be edited to meet all of those expectations that, and let me back away. Sometimes in the assessment, there might be some reasons why you might say, no, that doesn't really fit our goals. We don't need to measure that because it's not relevant to us at this time. So we looked closely at that, and that took several meetings. And then we did a complete edit and revision of the wellness plan, one of the attached addendums for you to look at tonight. We welcomed new members, so it was a great year to have new participation on the shack. New faces are always a wonderful thing, and so we are excited to have some new members. And Jeff, if you don't mind scrolling up a little bit, I want to thank all of the members publicly. I won't read their names, but those names are listed for the public to view, and we thank them all for their service. And then the last achievement that we always like to highlight is that we're so thankful for the great efforts of Jacob Galvan and the child nutrition team, and we really appreciate working closely with the child nutrition team. So we'll pull out of that annual report and move on to the SHAC applicant list. So we posted a SHAC application early in the summer, and we kept that open as long as we could until we needed to turn in the agenda for the board meeting tonight. And so what you have here is the first 21 names that had signed up for application to the SHAC. And all of you also, in addition, in your packet have a copy of the applications. We did not make the application content public, but we've summed it up there. As a point, I want to talk about the representation column. That's one of the questions that is asked on the application. Are you representing an organization that you would like to mention? And some people did list it, so you can see where some people say Seguin ISD employee. I didn't want to add any words that were not their own, so if they left it blank, I left it blank. If they added words, I put them there. But you'll notice that some people might be a Seguin ISD employee, but they did not claim to be representing Seguin ISD, so that's not included there. So that is the roster that we're putting before you for potential appointment, those 21 names. You do meet that 5 minimum number, and you also meet the 50% requirement too, that must be parents of current Seguin ISD kids that are not teachers or employees of the district. So they really want to engage the community here and not be biased by the input of the employees. And then the last exhibit, I'm not going to read, actually the last two, I'm not going to read these in detail because they're multiple pages, but I want to provide you a copy of the bylaws. The bylaws are a guiding document for us as a School Health Advisory Council. So we always share them with you annually, but there have been times when we need to provide edits to us. It just gives us context to how we operate our business. So it's more of an administrative document for us that we can vote as a SHAC to make amendments as needed to that. And then the last is the wellness plan with the edits. And again, that's multiple pages, but if you recall, not only what we were tasked with was assessing the wellness plan and not changing practice. So we added some language in there, and you'll recognize there's some language around caffeine, for example. So I'll pause there and ask if anyone has any questions. And again, I want to say thank you for pulling the agenda item so we can talk about it.
I just have one question. Is the wellness plan approved by the board or just approved by the SHAC?
It's just approved by the SHAC, yeah. So, but we definitely want you to see it. And we, because the SHAC is an advisory board to you, if there's anything that you would see in the wellness plan that you want edited, that certainly would be a good task for the SHAC to take on, is to meet those needs. And to really live into that. And I want to add one more level to this. All of you as board members, and maybe you're doing this already, you have the right, and I think it's a really a good opportunity for you to really, if you have constituents within your area that you would like to say, hey, I really want your input into school district decisions, the SHAC is a great way to engage community. So you can invite them to apply that way. Thank you.
And they can also attend the SHAC meetings, but not serve on the actual
100,
SHAC.
yes, for sure. So all
so that's
SHAC
the thing.
meetings are publicly open. They're public meetings. The membership, the reason for that is to hit quorum if we needed to take a vote. We always want to hear the community's input, but if we needed to take a vote that was a potentially significant decision that you needed to really gauge the membership that you've appointed, that's where that roster of names would come. But certainly anyone could attend the SHAC meeting and say, I'd like to share this as a community member on that topic. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move for approval.
All right, I have a motion to approve from Ms. Duncan and a second from Mr. Dwyer. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Because we moved the action item, 4B, we will take that up first. Before the action items in 8. So, Ms. Lyons.
Good evening, Board President Crittenden, Dr. Lee, and Board of Trustees. I'm going to review the district and campus improvement plans. Well, I'm not going to review all of the campus. I'm going to review the district, but you do have copies of all the campus plans. How we do the district improvement plan, we look at some data points. We assess the comprehensive need assessments with demographic, the academic achievement, progress, and programs, and then perceptions. DIC then reviews these and comes up with the goals and the performance objectives. Our first goal is to increase the percentage of third graders who go to meets in our STAR reading from 36% to 55% by 2027. Then our performance goals for the year is to increase our third grade in meets reading from 38%, which is our 2025 ratings, to 47% by June 2026. Then we'll go to increase our RLA in English 1, 2, and our EOC from 41% to 47% by June 2026. And then our last performance objective is for our K2 in reading and proficiency, using our RenStar assessment form from 40% to 48% by May of 2026. And we'll do the same exact thing for our math, raising our third grade level or above on STAR math from 28% to 52%, August 2027. And then we have our 3 performance objectives. For third grade who scored meets or above, we'll go from 35% in 2025 to 41% in June 2026. And then we'll increase our 3rd through 8th and algebra scores who meet on STAR from 28% to 35% in June 2026. And then for our pre-K2, proficiency in math in RenStar from 29% to 41% by May.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the ones we've gone up to so far, and they're all like 6, 7%, but 29 to 41, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, so we have, I can actually tell you, we have about 1,544 K through 12 students, okay? So we have 1,544 students in K through 12. We didn't take RenStar last year, we took iStation for K through 2. The platform for the assessment this year is RenStar. So in order to make the goal for 2027 at 52%, we're gonna have to raise our students in RenStar platform, which is a little bit different platform. It's still a screener. It's still the same type of assessment. It's a different platform. So it has the Lilo, Freckle, adaptive learning. So the students actually have a faster rate of growing. So we have to add 170 more students to our existing 633 students that are proficient. So we're adding 170 students to proficiency. Correct.
It's because that student population is smaller in comparison, yeah. So it takes less to get that percentage up is what it is.
Yeah, it averages out to 170 students. Then for our CCMR, our college, career, and military readiness, we want to increase from 58% to 80% by August 2027. We do have 3 components in CCMR. We have our TSI, we have our IB certification, and our dual credit and AP courses. So we want to raise our TSI from 29% to 42%, and our TSI math from 24% to 32% by June 2026. Our IBC from 26% to 40% by June, and our dual credit from 23 to 37, and our AP from 9% to 15% by June 2026. And then our last is to improve our, well, maybe not our last, but to improve our student, parent, and community and staff satisfaction determined by a district survey. The first one will to improve student satisfaction by fall of 2025 and fall of 2026 to be determined by a district survey. And then 2 and 3, 2 is parent satisfaction and 3 is staff satisfaction.
And just so community is clear and stuff, we're devising those surveys instead of using an outside vendor.
Correct. We're no longer using Gallup, it'll be a district survey. And then our last one, goal 5, based on school performance framework, our QSA, our campus tiering from 80% or more of Seguin ISD students will be enrolled in a tier 1 campus or tier 2 campus by August 2027. Our performance objective is to increase the percentage of students enrolled in a tier 1, tier 2 campus from 62% to 75%. Improve district attendance by 2%. And realize a 5% drop in discipline infractions for this school year.
So looking at this, like I don't want it to be a thought that where we're not reporting discipline infractions. Like I want to make sure that our staff is aware, like this is like overarching idea, but at the same time, like I'm not going to sacrifice discipline in the classroom for this objective.
Correct, and we are implementing some training for our APs and our principals coming up real soon on some of that topic.
That also came up a little bit in that DEIC meeting as part of that. That performance objective specifically is not necessarily about reducing recorded discipline infractions as much as it's about reducing student behaviors that result in discipline infractions. And so already we have started that process of, as Ms. Lyons mentioned, working with our campus administration about us setting district-wide expectations for behavior and how that works. I'm a big believer. I said this about accountability. You have to look at the data and respond to the data appropriately. We got to have the data in order to be able to respond to it. So if we have more discipline referrals, that's how we know what we need to respond to. The goal is not necessarily to reduce the amount that go in the system as much as it's to reduce what's happening so that we can avoid those types of behaviors more than anything else. And so we've got an idea and a plan in place to start working on that specifically with campus administrators.
I've seen it previously, like where things just happen, and I don't want that to be the case. Like I don't even like seeing a discipline thing as a performance objective, because I think discipline is discipline, and if you start trying to, and I know that comes from the state, and there are things that the part of the accountability, like they can hit us on having too much discipline, but I will take that hit all day long if we are, as long as we are having a good, safe educational environment for our students. That's the priority for me.
Sure. Yes.
I have 2 questions. I'm so sorry that I didn't do these in advance, but they literally just came to me in rereading this of the 15th time. So, the attendance percentage, so are we raising it by 2 percentage points? Like it's 90% and we're going to 92%? Are we trying to raise it 2%?
Correct.
Which one?
We're raising it, going from 90 to 92.
2. Okay. So it's 2 points. Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure we're all speaking the same language.
Yes, ma'am.
And then we had some numbers for dual credit and AP, and I wanted to see, we added on-ramps. So are we counting that in the dual credit numbers?
We didn't have on-ramps when this was going through the process this summer. We did get our application and it's up and running and going. So it will be added to our dual credit piece because it counts as the same type of CCMR point, if that makes sense.
And it also hit me that we probably need to update the policy for the weighting of the GPAs for on-ramps.
That's TEA. They are rolling out a new policy for how classes are weighted according to AP, dual credit, all the advanced courses. So there's a hold on that, and so it should be out hopefully by the end of September.
I just didn't know if we needed to update any of ours, that we just get to wait for them.
Yeah, we were going to, but we're waiting for them, so we don't have to update twice.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll wait until we get that from the TEA. That was a law that was passed in this most recent legislative session that talks specifically about GPA calculations. Each district has their own local decision-making process. What I would caution and what I anticipate happening, even with it coming from TEA, is typically when you make adjustments to your GPA calculation policies, they go into effect with incoming freshmen so that you're not changing the rules of the game for students mid-year. So you wouldn't change how you calculate GPAs for seniors because they have gone 4 years at that point, 3.5, 4 years almost, with the way that it's calculated. So what I expect is that we'll get some guidance from TEA to make that uniform across the state. But I don't expect that to take effect until potentially next year's freshmen for those changes.
Would we adjust, like I said, for on-ramps, would we adjust? Because those kids are taking a harder class.
Correct. It's weighted differently.
We've never had it before.
It just depends. We'd have to look at it, and we'd have to get with legal counsel just to make sure that we're not creating a situation. If it's labeled as like a dual credit course, then it would probably fall right in line with it. You just got to be cautious of if a student took a class already, and then somebody else gets the opportunity for a weighted class that didn't exist when they had the opportunity, like it could turn into an issue. So we just got to make sure that we follow that process correctly.
Thank you. It gets really complicated. Wow.
It does.
Student rank. Yeah.
Yep.
Any
Any
further
other questions? Thank you.
It's an action item, so. I will entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move to accept the DIP and CIP as presented by administration.
Second.
I have a motion for Mr. Bright and a second from Mrs. Miller. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Now we will move on to 8A, Personnel Action, Professional Employees, Mr. Newman.
Good evening, Board. I just have one professional employee to present for recommendation. It is Troy Spear, our new, or for construction manager position.
Any questions? It'll be very exciting to get a construction manager. Sure, Liz will throw a little party.
Right?
I can't see.
You can't see her because Mr. Newman's so tall, but she's...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's an action item.
Madam President, I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Duncan and a second from Mr. Dwyer. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have 8B, 2025-2026 Fine Arts Stipend Schedule Recommendation, Mr. Newman and Dr. Parrott.
We're pretty excited to present a bunch of compensation this evening, so we'll get started with Fine Arts.
Good evening, Board. President Crittenden, Dr. Lee, thank you for having us tonight.
All right, so just some information on the fine arts proposal. An evaluation of all fine arts stipends has not been completed in many years. I do know that there's been some spot checks here and there, but there has not been a complete research and overhaul of fine arts in many years. The proposed stipend schedule moves away from duty days, and held harmless is built into the new proposed stipend. So we're moving away from duty days for this particular schedule that we're presenting. Goals of the fine arts stipend proposal is to show the fine arts team that we value and appreciate their work, and to show our employees and the community that fine arts is important to Seguin ISD. Our justifications, Dr. Parrott met with each member or each department within the fine arts to receive employee input and determine workload. You'll see that on another slide where it's super fine. You probably won't be able to read the specific information on it, but it shows where he really dove into each department on the specific workload. We researched compensation with comparable districts and salary surveys to set stipend amounts, and stipends are proposed based on fair and equitable best practices. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Parrott to talk about these next two slides.
So when I was on the phone call for the board meeting in May, sitting there with my wife and hearing the new fine arts director will take care of this when he gets there, and I sat there and said, I have a task tomorrow. So we started this pretty quickly. The process was pretty intensive. Took all the information. I did not create anything brand new. Took all the previous information that was created with the previous fine arts director and the previous HR person. Took that and analyzed to make sure everything was correct. We found some glaring mistakes. They were not intentional mistakes. They were just things that were left out. Some numbers that were incorrect. Something that really stood out to me was in a comparison to New Braunfels High School head band director was listed at 1,600 on the original presentation when it's 16,000. That will cause some really drastic changes really fast. So I wanted to make sure we got all the numbers correct, and then started to look at the workload of all of our teachers. During that May meeting, we had lots of teachers who came in and said, here is what we do. I did push the idea of looking at required events that the district or that the community felt were required. I won't say who I used as our model for who would be our person who would say yay or nay. So if we went up to that person and said, we're going to cancel children's show, what would happen? And everyone would say, no, you're not doing that. So that's what we use as our sniff test. If it was the 14th program twice removed, we may not always need to do that every single year. We wanted to narrow down to the things that were absolutely required. When I finally asked all my people what they were supposed to be doing every year, we noticed some glaring challenges, that there were just a lot of events that were required, and we wanted to match the compensation to that. So I made a couple of changes. I'll jump down to number 3 first. I wanted to add a stipend for our color guard director. Our color guard director has not received a stipend in Seguin ISD, and there are many districts around us that have a color guard director as a stipend position. I just wanted to make sure that that was included, honor the additional work. You'll see her list in a little bit of the additional work there. I did make a reduction. This was made by looking into other districts that gave visual arts a stipend, so I wanted to make sure that I did this intentionally. Originally, it was posted at $1,200 per teacher, which would have put it at the exact same amount of work expected as middle school theater. That would have been a really robust amount of outside of school activities for art, which I haven't seen before, but I wanted to start them somewhere that honored VASE, junior VASE, county fair, all the competitions that they do go to the extra days to make sure that it made sense. So that was a reduction of visual arts, not by much, just by a little bit. We also increased our number of visual arts teachers in the district, our secondary art teachers, went from 7 to 8. So we did add an extra position there. And there were many that I saw that needed to boost for a couple of reasons, either to match the hold harmless clause that was put in place. While hold harmless was defined, it wasn't defined enough to make sure that we knew how it was going to work. The primary challenge is we had 2 teachers that would have been positively affected by hold harmless. That would have been our high school dance and one of our middle school head band directors, because they were staying in their current position. We had 2 teachers that could potentially have lost money based on this. So it would have been a middle school director who went from assistant to head, and our head band director who went from assistant to head at the high school as well. So because it was not completely defined, we wanted to make sure that we work that into our schedule so that we remove the hold harmless and we match with a flat rate that makes sense. There were also some groups that were not part of the conversation. I want to make sure they were included. That includes cheerleading and dance, which are now going to be officially fine arts groups. Congratulations again. Everyone knows I love cheer. Everyone knows I love it. So there were some changes that we made. As you can see, all of them listed right there. And then we can take a look. I've never done this before. Ta-da. Okay. It's a lot. To put it in perspective, items that are green are events that happen during the school day on school campus. Pep rallies, Veterans Day, things that don't take an additional trip in some capacity. Yellow is during the school day off campus, and red is everything that happens outside of the regular school day. That one kind of square in the middle, that's high school band. One of the first items up there is just labeled as 9 football games. If I listed it all out, it would get a little too much. Wouldn't fit on the screen. So I asked everyone to put their input. What are they working on? What are their semesterly activities? There is a separate slideshow or a separate form for elementary. The majority of the elementary groups are doing at least 3 outside of their regular workday. So once I took this into perspective, I started thinking about what's happening around us. We did compare to districts like San Marcos and New Braunfels, since they're our 2 most comparable districts in size and activities. But I was really moved by the questions that were asked during the May meeting, which were, how do we know what we do here in Seguin ISD matches, meets, beats, whatever, any other district around us? I took that to heart, along with how do we know that every school is doing the same amount of work? And so this is now labeled as our expectations of excellence. I love a good title. So this is what is expected of our programs outside of just the normal classroom teaching. And then we're going to be doing a year-long study of our surrounding neighbors, mostly San Marcos and New Braunfels, to understand what is it that they are putting out and how does it compare with Seguin ISD as well. I don't know what to say. Okay.
I'm not going to read them all out unless you want me to, but the new proposed stipend schedule is an increase of $23,055 to the current. And then one note that I want to make is the current stipend schedule amounts include the cost of duty days. So that's what you're seeing. It's $23,055 over the current, but we included the duty days in that amount. So you can see the dollar amount from what was proposed in May, and then the new proposal amount.
Mr. Newman, Dr. Parrott, could you possibly touch a little bit on some of these positions are seeing a larger percentage increase than others on like how that number came to be? So for example, like I'll use choir director that's showing like a 25% increase, or the theater head director that's seeing a 50% increase versus some of the others that are seeing like a significantly larger. And like, how did y'all determine what was the best option there?
So we started looking at our surrounding data. The TASB data was good, but we were also looking at those 2 surrounding the surrounding districts, what their average was going to be. So we were trying to meet or beat the averages. Some of these things, like head high school band director, used to be a stipend of $8,000 plus 33 extra days. So transitioning from that into a flat rate of 16,000 does look like a 100% increase, but it's actually about like a 15% decrease from what it was 3 years ago. So there are some modifications that are missing the extra days within there. Some of these, when we were looking at the additional work that, specifically theater was a really big one, looking at the additional work that was going on there. When we compared out all of the organizations, we started kind of, it's hard because it is apples to oranges, but we started looking at how many additional extra days are required of events and start to try and piece together what that looks like in a monetary value, it's a challenge. It's not going to be perfect, but it's a much closer representation of the work that's being done within our programs.
And so with the hold harmless, that is included in the new proposed stipend amount? Or the teachers that are getting the hold harmless are getting that on top of this new proposed amount?
So the hold harmless was worked into the final proposed amount that you see in the green. So for our head band director was proposed at 11,000, head high school band director was proposed at 11,000. Their hold harmless would have technically put them right at about 17,000 plus. So after communicating with him about how the hold harmless was not completely explained with, was it going to be the current position or the future position? We landed on 16,000 because that is the average within the area. The other people who were affected by that, like our head middle school band directors, that is with working in the highest paid hold harmless, what that would end up being.
I have a question about expectations. Looking over the expectations for choir and mariachi. Choir has a stipend of 5,000, mariachi has a stipend of 7,000. Compare those to high school dance and cheer, which high school dance is 8,500, high school cheer is 6,500. The list of expectations, choir and mariachi are significantly smaller than high school dance and cheer. You kind of talk to the rationale between there not being a bigger distinction between those amounts. If you kind of look at it per hour of expectation, it looks like there's a much higher value assigned to choir and mariachi than cheer and dance.
It's kind of in the same way that I looked at the difference between head high school band and assistant high school band. They're doing the same amount of work, but the averages across the area, their pay is much closer to the proposed amount. So same thing with mariachi. Mariachi across the area does receive traditionally about a $6,000 to $7,000 stipend, whereas cheer has such a wildly varying amount that it's, when you pinpoint it, it landed closer to that 6,500, 7,000. But one of the things that we are trying to do this year is start somewhere positive and then do the research and see what is actually happening within these programs to understand, are we meeting the expectations, are we beating the expectations, and then going back and reviewing those more often than every 10 to 15 years.
Okay. With that, dance and cheer are $2,000 difference between the two of them. Is it the same thing? Is it dance is traditionally, high school dance is traditionally a higher compensation than cheer?
Dance was one of the challenging ones because that was the one where we had to work in the hold harmless. Because our dance director is staying in their position. If we had put them at the proposed, which was, I believe, $5,600 was the original proposed back in May. If we had left them there, they would have been losing $3,000. We do have 2 brand new cheer coaches at the high school. But again, now that they have been, since this is how we could describe, a recent absorption into the purview, now we're actually going to be looking at it more and trying to find if there needs to be an increase after we work with this.
Okay.
Nothing ever stagnant.
I'm just gonna be honest with you on this one, like looking at the duties and everything like that. And I understand like the color guard's new to getting stipends and stuff, but if we're doing like, and just kind of looking at all the duties, just going along with like high school football games, you know, that's high school band, high school color guard, high school dance, high school cheer, all doing 9 football games. And then looking at like mariachi, high school mariachi has a fall concert, a pep rally, and then middle school recruitment for the entire year.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And then the color guard getting like 2,000, but yet still has almost all the same events as the high school band or high school high school cheer. They're about tied, except for maybe more in the spring. So I don't really feel like, I still think there's some work on equity here through the program as far as amounts.
Can I clarify something? Because I think it'll help with Mr. Bright's point. So those are the expectations. So those are the ones that you said you boil down to things that we couldn't lose from those. Those aren't necessarily an exhaustive list of all the things that they do. Because for instance, I could look at it and say, well, there's no improv for theater. But if that's something where, yeah, if you tried to take away children's show, that would be a whole different story than if you said, okay, we're not going to have an improv troupe this year. So it's the things that are expected as the baseline, not necessarily all the things they do. Because if you see all the things that mariachi plays at, they play at so many events.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the expectations.
Yeah, yeah. So
I'm saying like we're expecting high school cheer, high school dance, high school color guard to do 9 football games, but we're only expecting high school mariachi to do one fall concert, some pep rallies, and then middle school requirement. Like that's the expectation. Whether they do more or not, that's great. And a lot of our programs do a lot more than what's actually on this list, and I know that. But our expectation is those 3 people or those 3 groups are at all of the high school football games. They're at all of the meet the mats. They're at all of the pep rallies. They're at their own shows, their own competitions. And I don't feel like the expectations is equitable necessarily for what's being provided for stipends.
Yes, and so our big process this year is to make sure that we are analyzing what those expectations actually end up being. So in that list, that's what I sent out to the teachers. What I got back is what I got back during the busy season. This was during July when they're off duty. So that also that poses a challenge whenever we're trying to request things from teachers outside of the school year. Makes it a slight challenge. But there also comes from knowledge of the programs themselves. I can also openly say that I wasn't sure how far we were able to push. I want to make sure we understand that. I was not sure what my limits are, especially since this was a fun gift I received before I started working here. So I want to make sure that we are really going to be digging into this. This is a long research process to actually make sure that what we are doing is appropriate and that we are able to compensate our teachers appropriately. With the way that I'm observing these programs is much more intensive, where I'm trying to I should see every single teacher every 2 weeks. So they'll get seen. I'll be at all their performances, all their events. I just want to make sure that we are really digging into what is the average of the area around us to make sure that we're not just wildly overcompensating, but also looking at the programs that are happening here and looking at the programs across the area and making sure that we are excelling beyond what other programs are doing. But I agree, we want to make sure that we're also modifying that list of expectations to make sure that it is equitable across all of them.
So will it help if they document, since this year pretty much going to be research, up to the instructors or teachers to document everything that they do, as far as, for example, I did this event for 5 hours on Monday, and that may help you in the long run.
I'm leaning away from hours because I agree with Mr. Newman when we had a conversation about that if we say I work a certain number of hours, I rehearse a certain number of hours, that may be a required amount of hours. It may be something that we want to make sure, I just need those extra 5 hours just to make sure I'm comfortable with it. So more about the events. We want to make sure that we're basing it on the events that are necessary and required. So some of those are required, like tech rehearsals. Some of those are required rehearsal processes. But we also want to make sure that we're not trying to include every addition. As a choir director in this district, I would have loved an extra 150 hours of work with my kids. It wouldn't have been necessary. So I want to make sure that I'm working with the teachers directly so that they can classify what they are feeling is actually necessary. So at the end of this year, when we come up with a final number of this is actually how many events, how many extra days, that we can come back to this and look at it again and say, were we correct, or do we need to continue with this process? Yes, the events will be the documentation, and my observations of them will be, and the conversations and the meetings that I'm having with every teacher. We're having coaching meetings pretty often, so I'm able to see their events.
I think for me as a board member, it's really important to me that what we're expecting teachers to do, they're being fairly compensated for. And so if because of the stipend and because of budget constraints, we can only pay this much of a stipend, I would like to make sure that the expectations we have of them means that they're still being fairly compensated. And so it may mean that the theater, we can't compensate. The stipend doesn't include, what did you say about the theater? The improv. It might not, but the theater teacher can still do improv, but just know that's above the expectation. I think it's really important to kind of move that direction to make sure that whatever that stipend number looks like is that we're fairly compensating for what we're requiring.
Especially across the board, when somebody with 3 events makes way more than somebody that has 25 events on the schedule there.
Yes, and that's why also I don't think there's ever been a dive like this in any district. I've spoken to a lot of fine arts directors, and this is not something that's happening in their district. There is just something they inherit. So we're going to be paving the way in an interesting way, something new. But it's going to be really valuable because I agree. Like, we want to make sure that what our teachers are being asked to do is compensated fairly, and that there's at least an understanding of how that compensation reflects the work that's being done.
I don't want to speak for Dr. Parrott or for Mr. Newman by any stretch. I think that if we were to sit here tonight and say, hey, you can triple those stipends, that he would do it in a heartbeat. Let's be very clear there. I think Miss Banks may have the heart attack back there, but everybody else would be good. Dr. Parrott, has anything like this ever been done here that you know of? Like, that's even documented what some of the required events are?
No. I've been with the district for 10 years in some capacity, either as an observer or 8 years as a teacher. That has never been asked of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know how much work and care went into this, so we appreciate it tremendously. And I know, yeah, there'll be some things we'll have to adjust, but we'll have the knowledge to adjust things as needed, and that's a huge win. So
yeah,
thank
board, and I know that you also have another action item that has to do with compensation plan, but just for your information, and Ms. Banks, Mr. Newman will probably talk about this a little bit, but we will have a compensation plan review that is done this year also, that's going to look at all of these things again to compare us with everybody that's outside TASB will come in and do that for us. That will just be more data for us to look at as we make adjustments or changes, because we may get something wrong. It may not be at the level that it should, or we may have something that is too high and we just don't know it yet until we get some of that information. So I just wanted you to have that information.
Any further questions? Sorry, did you have something to say, Mr.
No,
Newman?
I just was going to say, and just lastly, the goal is to have a thriving fine arts program at Seguin ISD, which was the last slide. We got through the questions, I think. Yeah.
Madam President, I move to approve the 2025-2026 compensation plan.
Yep.
No,
Fine
I'm
arts.
on the wrong one. Fine arts stipend schedule recommendation.
All right, I have a motion from Ms. Duncan and a second from Mrs. Miller. Any further discussion?
I just want to say is that I do think that fine arts is very important to our community. It's very important to our school district. I think that this is a great start. I think we have some positions that are being fairly compensated, and I hope over the course of the year is that when we see this stipend schedule next year, is that some of those other positions, there's a bump up in those stipends, depending on the expectations.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Good job.
All right, moving to 8C, 2025-2026 compensation plan, teacher hiring table, pay grades, and substitute pay. Mr. Newman and Ms. Banks.
All right, so we started out with substitutes. We pared down the substitute rates. We didn't pare down the rates, rather, we raised the rates, but we pared down the schedule. It just was a little bit complicated, and so as you can see on the right-hand side, the 24-25 group versus the 25-26 of what we're proposing.
We did pull substitute rates from several surrounding districts as well, so that's how we decided if we needed to go up or down. Probably 6 or 7 different districts, we pulled all of their rates. And as Mr. Newman said, we kind of had a lot going on in 24-25 as far as classification of people, and it's a little hard to manage, so we wanted to streamline it more. So I'm going to let him talk a lot about this because, I mean, I know he hasn't been here for very long, but this guy is super smart and has learned so much about our compensation plan. And I don't want to embarrass him, but he's phenomenal. So he knows more about the compensation plan than I do, and he hasn't been here for very long. So I'm just going to let him go through it, and
Yeah, so excited to come here right when HB2 threw a wrench in the system of compensation. Starting out, Liz and I went round and round on this. We had many hours of meetings. We decided the best thing is to pull nurses, librarians, and instructional coaches off of the teacher pay scale and move them to our professional pay scale, which is the P1 scale. And then counselors, we ended up moving to the P2 scale. And that really was based on looking at what the compensation was of our current nurses, librarians, and instructional coaches, and our counselors, as well as looking at TASB studies and other schools. We decided to go with recommend a straight 2% raise on the daily rate for those people, so not off the midpoint. That's important because we'll talk about what we're offering for the non-teachers, but to make it fair for those folks that were on a step scale, we decided that it should be a straight 2% increase. And just a side note, there's a handful of those folks that were on, so our pay scale on years 8 to 9 and years 28 to 29 are a huge jump for whatever reason. So we're gonna make sure that no one goes down in pay or that 2%. So years 8 to 9 is slightly over 2%. And years 28 to 29, which we didn't have anybody 28 to 29, but we do have a couple of people on the 8 to 9 scale. We're gonna give them what the step would have otherwise been, which is slightly over the 2%. And then TASB is gonna do a study. We're set to start sometime this year, I think early this year, and I think that's gonna be helpful as well to just give us more guidance on compensation.
y'all also do have 2 exhibits in your packet. One is the teacher pay scale, and then the other is the actual pay scales. If you want to kind of look at those, we're going to talk about classroom teachers now, but those nurses and librarians were on the teacher pay scale before, right?
Correct.
And counselors were there, but not. It was kind of convoluted. So again, we're trying to streamline by the way that we're moving things.
So for the future, would the pay scale for librarians and would that stay up the same proportion that it would have if they stayed on the teacher pay scale?
They actually have more room.
To go up, okay.
But they'll fall in with the regular staff increase, correct?
I just want to
Yep.
make sure we weren't inadvertently putting them on something to where they hit some kind of wall. And, you know, I love librarians, so, I mean, I love everybody, but keep up with and Jackie's right there. No, it's something I just know a little more about, just like some of the other things. So I just want to make sure that that we're not accidentally pushing somebody off into something inadvertently. Sometimes when I can't see all the numbers, it makes me nervous, but I trust them.
Well, when we go into the attached exhibits, I can point that out for you as well.
Just to clarify on that, so nurses, librarians, and instructional coaches and counselors, by moving to a different pay scale, no one's salary will decrease, but there's actually more of an opportunity to increase. Is
Yes.
that what I'm hearing?
So it'll be in line with what, like if y'all were to do a 2% midpoint as we're recommending, it would be in line with that like it is for all other staff. The hard thing this year is that TEA is saying, well, the legislature and TEA is enforcing it, that we have to give teachers a larger bump. And they are not including librarians in that, or counselors, or me, or custodians, or anybody. So classroom teachers, or what TEA is interpreting as classroom teachers, they are going to see a higher raise this year. And we can't give it to everybody, but we wish we could.
Yeah, and to be clear with what Ms. Banks is saying, like that is per the state. That is, I mean, we would love to be able to do that. I think I can speak openly and honestly in that our goal would always be to give as much compensation as we can to our employees to make sure that they are set and to do the best we can to keep us competitive and everything else. And in this case, like the state was very clear on what the teacher retention allotment can go to and what they will fund us for and what they will not fund us for. For every other employee, they're giving us what, $40, $70?
Yeah, it's like a total of like $270,000.
So we get $270,000. And $270,000 that is supposed to be spread out among every other employee throughout the district that is not a teacher, a classroom teacher that's teaching for half the day or more.
So a quick question, was the district had more flexibility if the legislators would have increased the per student allotment? And that's what they didn't want to do. Well, actually, they increased it, but barely.
Hands down. As a superintendent, as a CFO, as a chief human resources officer, if the state were to ask us what you want, like what would work best for Seguin ISD in any district in the state, it would be give us the lump sum amount of money that you want to give towards pay increases, and we will guarantee you that it will go to pay increases. We're not going to use it to buy tires for school buses. We're going to pass that along to employees. They don't trust that schools will do that, and instead assigned it specifically to PEIMS coding. So we only get that funding for individuals that are coded very specifically inside our PEIMS data. And that's where the struggle is for us. Because we want to be able to give it, I'd give $5,000 to every single employee in the district if they gave us the money for it. We just don't, we didn't get it.
So we gave, for the increase on the teacher scale, we did the step plus the teacher retention allotment. We noticed that a lot of other schools were building in the last year amount and the teacher retention allotment, but we ended up giving them the entire step increase that's on there, plus the teacher retention allotment. And then for steps 0, 1, and 2, we added a $1,250 increase. That's just something that the school is putting in there. That is nothing that the TRA is giving the school. And so then, and then we're adding in a new uncertified teacher hired after September 1, 25 pay scale, basically to put them at $55,000 and freeze them. Our practice in the past was that we were putting them on the teacher pay scale, even though they were uncertified, and giving them increases. For those who are currently uncertified and are at the school, they're frozen for the 26-27 until certified, so we are not taking away compensation even for those folks.
I asked this in a different meeting, but I'll ask it so we can hear it here. So does that include our District of Innovation, like CTE and people like that?
And then,
So you're saying that those people are uncertified? Like they're considered certified, right? So they're not going to be frozen, right? Okay.
that's correct. Yeah, CT is a carve-out.
One thing I wanted to point out on the Step Plus teacher retention allotment for classroom teachers. So do you understand what that means? Like our teachers were moving up a step and then we gave them 2,500, and some school districts are not moving them up a step, they're just giving them 2,500 more than they made next year. The reason that we decided to do that is because we pulled teacher salary schedules for area districts and looked, and we wanted to stay competitive, and we were not going to stay competitive with what we consider our competitors if we didn't do that. Smaller districts, if you remember, got more money. If they had under 5,000 students, they received more money than we did in the teacher retention allotment, so we're trying to stay competitive with some of those districts. Does that make sense? Okay.
To go back to the carve out, the nurses, librarians, the group of 4, are we competitive with those rates where they are? Because they're not receiving the increase.
Yeah, so he's going to show you where we set their pay scale. We set that according to our current staffing. We looked at their years of experience and their salary, and we have kind of a wide range, so that was great information. But we also pulled a study from TASB, which is Texas Association of School Boards. We have them coming in to do this salary compensation study, but we can kind of do some of our own, and so we do a lot of what they do, just in smaller increments, and we did that to make sure we were competitive, and we were. Keep in mind, that's old data. So, yes, so we'll look at that again. We set our scale according to our staff and a raise, a 2% raise, but we will reevaluate that when they come and do the study. And it's a great year to do the study. I had wanted to do it last year, and I'm so glad that it didn't work out, because now we have a great year to compare to other districts.
This current one is the teacher pay scale, and you can see where the teacher retention allotment kicks in, and you can see where we put the 1250 on the 0, 1, and 2 scale. It also makes it look a little cleaner as far as the dollar amounts going all the way down. If you scroll, Jeff, scroll down all the way to year 30. Yeah, so remember that number. The 75,700, which is at the 30-year mark. If you go, Jeff, go to the bottom or the next sheet there. Yep. So this is the professional scales, which includes the proposed 2%. If you remember on P1, and you probably have to calculate that because I didn't put the salary amount in there. Right, you'll have to daily rate. But that daily rate on the far end of P1, I believe that is higher than even that 7,700 for the teacher scale. So they actually have more potential as they move up in their years of experience than even what the teacher scale was. And so librarians, nurses, and instructional coaches are P1, just as a reminder, and counselors are on that P2 scale.
And the instructional coach stipend is on top of the P1?
So we were planning on taking the instructional coach's salary and building in that stipend that's in their current salary and make that their base.
So they're getting that stipend like they were on the teacher pay scale, which there's been a lot of moves in the last couple of years. As we've done research, there were different goals, different years for how we were going to pay instructional coaches, so it's kind of convoluted. They're going to be, that $3,000 is being considered when we put them on the pay scale. Can you go back to the teacher hiring table? I think there's an old, I think you have an old one. Yeah, we took it off, yeah. Yeah, so the classroom teachers with a master's degree will be compensated an additional $1,000 annually. We were doing that before, we'll still do that. Jeff, could you scroll down again? I already forgot what I read, sorry. Right there. And then we just talked about the current uncertified and new uncertified teachers like we did on the last slide, and then capping retirees at step 25.
I have a quick question. So, like, an ISS teacher, where would they fall in? Sorry.
It depends on whether that ISS classroom is staffed by an actual certified teacher that's employed in a teaching position, or if that is staffed by a paraprofessional that's in that classroom for ISS, which sometimes does happen. So it's going to depend on whether they're a paraprofessional or a teacher.
Okay. So a paraprofessional would fall under the P1 through P8 category?
We have a lot of titles on those categories.
Okay. I was just.
I would be lying if I told you I knew what level that position is on, but we can find out.
Okay. Sorry to throw it out there.
No, that's okay. I wish I knew.
I have a quick question. We go to the top of the slide, zero experience for teachers. If I remember correctly, historically, we always were above surrounding school districts, for example, San Marcos, New Braunfels. Are we up there again, or?
We are up there again. The trouble is that what we were finding is we're pretty competitive with 0, 1, and 2-ish, and then we start to fall off a little bit. And so that's part of, I believe, TASB is going to come and help us, but it's part of us including the 2,500 on top of that step so that we can be externally competitive.
It's like Ms. Banks and Mr. Newman said, the challenging piece of it is going to be that we have folks, other districts around us, like Navarro ISD is the closest one that I can think of, that their pay scales were competitive with us, but we were always above them. They're now getting $8,000 per teacher instead of $5,000, which the legislature's intent and design was to make it competitive, whether you're in a rural, smaller school or a bigger urban school. Like, that was the intent of the legislature, was that those smaller schools could make as much money as the larger schools. So it was designed that way. What we're going to find is that we're probably going to end up being a little bit more competitive, or have other districts that are more competitive with us than what they've traditionally been, based off of them getting significantly more funding than we are.
Jeff, can you go back to the slides?
And I did check. We have ISS aides, and they're on a C2 pay scale.
So paraprofessionals are hourly employees versus daily rate employees.
So I think we talked about it a little bit, but the 2% off the midpoint raise for all other staff, paraprofessionals, clerical, and auxiliary support staff and administration. We also are recommending that we do a one-time $500 stipend for full-time employees and a $250 stipend for part-time employees to be paid on their prospective November payroll.
On my birthday. Happy birthday, everyone.
On Linda's birthday. And the approximate cost that we have is $4 million, but if you want to.
For every percent we go up, it's about $300,000 total cost to the district, just so you have that in your mind. Just looking at what other area districts and just districts across the state were doing, especially dealing with a budget deficit, that we thought that 2% was in line. We're hearing 1%, some 3%. I mean, it can always be all over the place, but 2% was kind of what we were hearing. And we're going to, the next slide, I believe, is, it kind of explains the midpoint, because I know that's always something that's really hard to explain to people, so I wanted to go through that. Not that you can't ask me questions on that last slide, but I wanted to explain the midpoint. And this is a slide that we're going to email to all of our staff, along with a graphic that we have going out for whatever the compensation plan is adopted, to kind of explain it to them. But basically, a midpoint is a best practice so that you don't have employees growing beyond what other employees are growing. So this is an example. If you have a pay scale that's the minimum is $8, the midpoint is 10, and the maximum is 12, just like those pay scales we just showed you, then everyone's going to get a 2% raise on the midpoint. So 2% of the midpoint is off of $10, which is 20 cents an hour. So no matter what that employee is making, if they are in that pay scale, they're all going to get a 20-cent raise. If they're below, they're going to get a 20-cent. If they're above, they're going to give a 20%. Otherwise, you have staff that might be closer to the maximum getting a 2% raise, and they're going to grow, and it's inequitable. So we did not do that with the staff that had not been on a pay scale prior, because we wanted to make sure that they got they're a little different situation, because they didn't have a min and a mid and a max. Does that make sense? And part of the reason we thought about the November stipend, I know that's something that, I mean, every school district likes to be able to do that, but that also gives us some room after TASB comes in and does a compensation review. That's money that we're just giving this year, so it's not an annual expense in our budget, so that gives us a little bit more room, like $600,000. TASB will make recommendations for us to become more equitable, maybe over a 5-year period, so that gives us a little bit of money to put towards that plan next year. We're happy to, go ahead.
Oh, in previous districts where I have done a compensation plan review, TASB actually does what they call equitability adjustments. And they are specific for positions that need to be adjusted based off of whatever it is that they do, where they're compensated versus where they compete with others. So it's not just about adjusting pay scales, it's also about they look at individual employees and their position and what their hourly rate or daily rate is comparative to other positions that are similar, not just like what we're talking about is over one full pay scale. They'll dive into individuals and give that equity raise or that equity increase or no increase or whatever it is, depending on where they fall in that scale.
I have a few questions just about implementation. The first one being is that it's a little complex about where everyone sits. So if you're an employee of the district, and how do you find out exactly what you will be making?
Yeah, so tomorrow I'm going to get a whole bunch of emails. And they're going to be like, hey, can you tell me what my first paycheck is going to look like? So this is a complicated process. We are literally going to we have a spreadsheet of every employee in the district, and we're going line by line to make sure that there's no holes. Ideally, we want everyone's first paycheck in September to be correct. I don't want to say that's impossible, but it would be quite amazing if that happened, because there's just too many things. So as we get emails from people, I'm going to answer them as best I can. I don't want to take away from being able to implement the program for the district, but we're sending out information in an email tonight that will hopefully give them an overview, an explanation of the midpoint, and just trying to get their questions answered ahead of time. And I'll be honest, I've heard from a lot of employees this summer already. So hopefully, I mean, they'll be able to log in. The way that our system works is after everyone's paid off in August, as their information gets put into Munis, which is the system we use, they can log in once it's live and they can see exactly what their pay is going to be. So we will make sure that they know when they can log in and do that. And that's typical. We'll have them sign off on it.
And then this is effective as of?
September 1.
So
yes.
It's hours work from September 1st.
So employees that are on a July contract, it'll be retroactive. Like I'm a July 1, so it'll be retroactive. August will be retroactive, and September 1s wouldn't. Teachers, for instance, don't get their first paycheck until September, so they won't have anything retroactive for July and August, but other employees will. Employees that work year-round.
Hourly employees would be
They're in both situations where they're year-round and September, but they'll, if they're a custodian or maintenance person that works year-round, then they'll see retroactive pay for July and August in their September paycheck. So their September paycheck will be higher than what it will be in October.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Thank y'all. I know this was a lot of work, and
Well, I mean, thank you. I could not have done it without Mr. Newman. Like, yeah, he's great.
and you know, as Dr. Lee said, I think yeah, we'd give everybody so much if we
Yeah,
had it.
it'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be that would be fun.
Madam President, I move for approval of the 2025-2026 compensation plan.
Second.
I have a, sorry, I just want to make sure that would include the teacher hiring table, the pay grades, and the,
Do you want me to say it all?
I'd feel comfortable
Well,
if you.
it wasn't on the screen and I couldn't see the paper, so it's now right in front of me, so I won't read that. No, that's no judgment on anyone in the gallery back there. Thank you. Madam President, I move for approval for the 2025-2026 compensation plan, teacher hiring table, pay grades, and substitute pay.
I still second.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it just makes me feel better. That is a motion from Ms. Duncan and a second from Mr. Bright. Any further discussion?
I just would like to observe, I feel like Ms. Duncan used her radio voice on the second reading.
It's true.
I am who I am.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. We'll have some happy employees tomorrow. Or tonight if they stayed up to watch this. All right. 8D, adoption of order setting the tax rate for 2025.
And this is just adopting the tax rate as we do every August. Again, it's our maximum compressed tax rate, which is set by TEA according to our property value growth, and then our 6 golden pennies, and then our INS rate, which is also staying the same, for a total of 1.0828.
Any questions?
Which is no change from last year.
No change, it's the same.
Madam. Second.
All right, I have a motion from Mrs. Miller and a second from Mr. Guerra. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, now we move to 8E, discussion and possible action on homeschool UIL participation. Dr. Lee.
Board, before I jump into some of the explanation, I just wanted to apologize to our friends who had to sit here and wait until the evening, late in the evening, when that was the one item that you were looking for. I deeply apologize. In fact, a lot of what they said is going to be some of what I addressed. Part of this, House Bill 547 was that initial bill that allowed for school districts to opt in to allow homeschool students to participate in those UIL events, and that really took effect for the 21-22 school year. The most recent legislative session is where Senate Bill 401 came into effect and was passed. The primary change with that bill for Senate Bill 401 to House Bill 547 was that school districts were automatically opted in for allowing homeschool students to participate in those UIL events. And what the law did is it gave us deadlines as school district to opt out each year rather than opt in. Otherwise, we were automatically opted in. And that typical deadline moving forward, other than this school year, will be August 1st. This school year is the only time that it is set as September 1st, which is why it's so late on our agenda. And that is because the law really doesn't take effect until September 1st, based on that legislative session. I think it's important to acknowledge a couple of things. Anytime that we are talking about students, children, and their ability to participate in anything is a very important discussion. I'm the superintendent for Seguin ISD, and as Mr. Beisenbach, I hope I said that right. I hope Beisenbach, I apologize. As Jason pointed out, does that work a little better? As Jason pointed out, like I deeply believe in the ability for students to participate in events. I think that's incredibly important. The reason that I think it is so important, though, is that is often one of the things that get them into the doors for school for us to teach those English, math, science, and social studies. As the superintendent, my responsibilities and my roles and my role relies heavily on me doing what I think is best for the students that are enrolled and the students that attend Seguin ISD. That is not to discount students that do not, and it's not to discount parents that make decisions one way or the other. I don't always agree with everything that happens out there, but I respect individuals' rights to make those decisions that they believe are best for their family, that they believe is best for their children, just as I would want to do as a parent too. And sometimes that includes wanting your children to do homeschool rather than public school, or private school rather than public school, or whatever that is. But as a superintendent, my recommendation and my responsibility is to do what I believe is best for the students that are enrolled. And I think that in this case, what is best for our students is that we continue to operate as we have done in the past, that we continue to opt out for this year as we move forward. That is the action that we took last year. I think that that's what's best for our kids who do attend Seguin ISD right now. Of course, I would welcome anybody who lives in the district to attend Seguin ISD, to take part in all of the great things that we have happening, not just the extracurricular events, but also the education that happens in the classroom. And I know that that is a passionate thing for everyone, whether you're a parent that has kids who attend or you're a parent that chooses not to have your children attend. That's 100% yours. But I also recognize that being in a leadership position sometimes means that I have to make recommendations that not everyone agrees with, and not everyone thinks is the right recommendation. But that's what leadership is sometimes making the hard decisions or the hard recommendations. And so my recommendation is that we continue to operate as we did last school year, and we opt out of allowing homeschool students to participate in UIL events.
Could we pull up the proposed resolution so we can see that? Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Lee?
I'm gonna ask a question. Do you see, I know that this year there's a lot of changes going on with the new high school principal, new superintendent, everything like that. As we move forward and as things progress to a better level, if you will, would you see that this would be an opportunity that we could explore in the future?
I think that there is. I think that there's always the possibility that we could explore something in the future. I don't believe in just shutting the door every single time, or shutting the door now for moving forward. You know, it's a newer thing that's come about with homeschool and being able to participate. And so, like, I don't want to say yes, it will be a reality next year, or no, that it wouldn't be a reality next year. I think that it would be dependent upon what is best for our school district at that time. And we'd have to get our group together, we'd have to look at it, and we'd have to explore and do some research to figure out if we think that that's what's best or not. I know that's the most non-answer answer I could give.
Dr. Lee, I have a question as well. With being in the district six weeks, and kind of a level of priorities, do you feel like opting into this would create some priorities that don't align with your current priorities for the district, with the manpower time needed to?
I think that if we opted into this, if we chose not to opt out, could we make it happen? Yeah, of course, we can make anything happen. I have a great team that would be willing to put in the effort, to be willing to do whatever it takes to make things work as best possible. We wholeheartedly believe in what's best for kids. I just think that in this instance, my recommendation is that it's what's best for the kids that are enrolled in Seguin ISD. That's my priority, and it will be my priority moving forward. I'll fully admit, if I was the private school superintendent, I'd probably recommend what I think is best for the private school at that time. That's you know, if you're not doing a job because you're passionate about it, then I don't know why you would do it. I'm passionate about public school. I'm passionate about my kids being a part of public school. My kids attend here too and do extracurricular events, but they also attend school here every single day. I don't think that it is fair for them to compete with students who do not attend here.
Madam President, I move to adopt and approve the resolution as written in the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion for Mr. Dwyer, and I have a second for Mr. Guerra. Any further discussion?
I just want to acknowledge that I appreciate all of the feedback that's been brought forth. I think feedback is always really good. I feel like that for me that this is not the time until there's some more sturdy things kind of developed that are ready for us. But I just want to say publicly that I do hope that we continue to keep that door open and keep discussions happening. With the deadline being in 6 days, it's very tight to do it, but I hope that in the spring we can open up the discussion again and look at the potentials and possibilities.
Echoing what Lisa says, I see this as a great tool for our district to get access to some outside exposures, kind of like what Mr. Silvas did with the private-public venture that we're doing with the zoo school, allowing homeschool students to compete with our UIL. I don't think right now is the best timing for it, but I think that it's something that we could definitely look at, especially for some different programs in the future.
And I want to say I appreciate y'all meeting with us and talking and all the work that you've done. It's not for nothing. This is some great stuff to consider and look at. And I think there are programs where, especially new programs or small programs, where looking at this in the future is definitely something that could be a win-win for everybody. We have a lot of people moving in to our district that are expecting some new things we've never had before. They're moving from other places in the country, so they're looking for wrestling and things that we've never done. So I played lacrosse, and I had never heard of that before. I got to college, so I think there's some things to look at, and yes, I think it's a discussion that has to be had throughout the year. We didn't hear, I don't know about anybody else, but after we had the discussion, I didn't hear from anybody else until we came to this summer. So I think for planning purposes and things like that, we would just have to talk more throughout the school year. So, any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. All right, moving on. I have too many papers. Moving on to 8F, first reading for consideration or approval of local district update, LDU, EFB, EIA, FD, FM, and FNCE. Dr. Lee and Ms. Lyon.
Some of the stuff. The recommendation for the Board of Trustees is to approve amended local board policies, EFB, EIA, FD, FM, and FNC. Local policies may be adopted or amended by a majority of the board at a regular or special board meeting, provided that board members have had written notice and proposed of the change. Do you have any questions on any of the changes to any of these policies?
Board, just to add on there, what you've got in front of you are just a handful of policies that are related to those legislative changes that have just happened, specific to UIL participation, personal communication devices, cell phones, that's what the state has labeled them as, personal communication devices, library books and progress reporting, None of these are changes due to anything other than the legislative changes that happened and us making sure that we're in compliance with those, that our local policies match the legal policies.
Right, and then what's in red is what's been stricken, and what's blue is what has been added.
My only question on the policies is there under the, I'm sorry, I just lost it. Under the personal electronic devices, under compliance, it is annually the superintendent shall report to the board on the implementation and compliance of this policy. What does that mean?
Yeah, it basically means that every year we're going to give you a report that talks about how we implemented that. And so we've talked about that over the last couple. It's in your code of conduct as part of that, and just how we have complied with it. Basically, that we're following the policy and the law, because the policy now matches a law rather than it just being a local policy. It used to be just local policies on cell phones, and now it's flat out law.
Any further questions?
Madam President, I move to accept the first reading for consideration, I move to approve the local district update policies, LDU, EFB, EIA, FD, FM, and FNCE.
I have a motion from Mr. Bright and a second from Ms. Duncan. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. All right, moving on to 9, board comments and requests. Yes, Mr. Guerra.
I would just like to make a comment on the most recent accountability ratings. I would like to acknowledge our students, families, current and former staff and administrators for making significant year-to-year progress in several areas throughout our district. And as Dr. Lee alluded to earlier, the work is not done yet. There's still areas that need to be improved.
Thank you. Any other requests or comments? Seeing none, we move to 10.
Move to adjourn.
That is a motion for Mr. Bright and a second for Mr. Dwyer. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7-0. It's 10:23. Good night, everyone.
Okay, I have 2 pages for signatures, gentlemen and ladies.